What is going on, Tar Heel Nation, ACC football family, and college football family? It is not your favorite North Carolinian, Russ the Tar Heel. It is hopefully your favorite Yinzer. And y'all may be wondering, what is going on here? Well, I'm going to fill you in. You may not know this, but Russ the Tar Heel is a very, very busy man. He works very, very hard to support his beautiful wife and 3 children. He is also coaching little Russ to be not only, I'm sure, a future Tar Heel, but an NFL draft pick as he's coaching little Russ's football team. So he has been very, very busy. And when I reached out to him recently to ask if we were going to do another ACC preview video like we did last year, which was a roundtable of myself and Russ and Dennis and Lovey, he was like, brother, I just don't know that I have the time. I still haven't done the TCU preview video. So I was like, brother, let me step in and help. And to his credit, Russ has trusted me enough to go to the bullpen and pull out Timu Russ to do the ACC preview video. Now, the first thing you'll realize, other than I'm not Russ the Tar Heel, is that this is going to be a very, very low budget production because there is no production. There's a Yinzer, some ACC football helmets. There's no graphics. I don't have Russ's personality, his looks, his editing ability, none of that. So we're just going to wing it, and this is going to make a great podcast if you're listening in the car because there's no video to watch. There's just listening to me ramble on. So without further ado, let's get into the 2026 college football season as it pertains to the ACC. And I'm going to give you my power rankings. This is just my own personal opinions. A lot of it has to do with roster talent. Some of it has to do with tend to favor teams that return quarterbacks, at least either from the previous season or that have starting experience. And some of it has to do with schedule, because unfortunately, if you look at the ACC, there's a lot of just imbalance in the schedule. So without further ado, I think that there is no doubt that the number one team in the ACC for 2026 is the Miami Hurricanes. They returned Kadarius Toney, who was just lights out last year, basically uncoverable. You have Mark Fletcher Jr., who is just an absolute stud at running back. They are loaded on both sides of the offensive and defensive lines. They bring in Darian Mensah from Duke to lead that offense that has nothing but weapons, and they add Cooper Barkade from Duke. So this may be the first year that Miami wins an ACC title, which is weird to say since they've been in the ACC since 2004, played for national title last year, but they don't have an ACC title. They are the odds-on favorite to win the ACC. Could go unbeaten. They do play Notre Dame in the middle part of the season. Have a few other games where I think they have SMU that could potentially be pitfalls, but overall they're going to be pretty good. Number 2, I've got SMU because I'm a very, very big fan of Kevin Jennings, guy who's got, I think, 28 starts, took a team to the college football playoff. Really, really talented, has the ability to throw from odd angles, really get the football out and distribute it. Threw for 365 and a touchdown and ran for a touchdown in a win over Miami last year. Rhett Lashley is one of the best play callers in college football, and their defense last year was number 4 in the ACC, 20.5 points a game, and that gives them an opportunity to win week in, week out. I think they are a very strong candidate to be in Charlotte come December. Number 3, I've got Louisville, and Louisville brings in Lincoln Kienholz. They're going to have a new starter, new quarterback. Lincoln Kienholz from Ohio State, who, from what I've read, pushed Julian Sand to the limit before Sand won the Ohio State job. Kienholz went in the portal, is now with Jeff Brom, who is a quarterback whisperer at Louisville. He also has Isaac Brown, who averaged 8.8 yards a carry behind a really good offensive line last year. I think they lose a couple of starters off that O-line, but they've done a really good job of replacing those guys, coaching them up. They're always one of the best O-line units in the ACC. Really what impressed me last year was in 2023, 2024, Louisville's pass defense was terrible. And last year, that defense as a whole was a really solid unit. They did a good job forcing turnovers. They were 5th in the ACC in points allowed at 21.2 points a game. So they're another strong candidate if they get good quarterback play. Miller Moss was a little bit of a downgrade from Shuck the year before, and then he got hurt. And when he was hurt, their depth really began to show. If Kienholz can be a good, solid starting quarterback, Louisville's a dangerous football team. At number 4, I've got Virginia. Y'all know I'm a fan of Tony Elliott. I think he's done an amazing job at Virginia. They have an outstanding offensive line. Their defense is solid. They were 2nd in the ACC in defense last year at 19.6 a game. They have a fairly favorable schedule. They open with NC State, and then they have SMU and Cal. And there's no Louisville, there's no Miami, no Clemson, no Pitt. So I really think that they could be a solid team. They bring in Bo Pribula to replace Chandler Morris. I think somewhat of a step down, but if they can run the ball consistently, they're going to be another solid team that may be in the mix. They did win a bunch of close games last year and go into overtime. It'll be interesting to see if they can do that again. Number 5, I have Clemson, and I think people have just forgotten about Clemson because of last year, and I think a lot of people assume that Clemson is just over, but you're still coached by a guy who's got 2 national titles and has played for 2 others, and that roster still has a lot of talent on it. Defensively, they were 3rd in the ACC last year. They ended up giving up only 20.5 points a game. If they can get production offensively, they're still a dangerous football team with a lot of talent. So that's going to be interesting to see what we get out of Clemson, or if it really is over. Number 6, I've got Pitt. I think people are sleeping on Pitt. They did lose a lot in the portal, especially at receiver, and they lost probably arguably their best defensive player in Raheem Biles, who is down the street at Texas. 101 tackles, 17 for loss. They also lose Kyle Lewis to the NFL. So it's going to be tough replacing those guys, but Narduzzi's scheme it's designed to make linebacker stars. They have, replaced what they lost in the secondary, and I don't think there's that much of a drop-off because they've got so much depth there, good young talent. The defensive line is solid. They were 8th against the run. Thing is, they were 100th against the pass. And part of that is that they haven't had that disruptive force on the D-line to get pass rush. They have to get tackles for loss. They have to get sacks. Because if not, it puts a lot of pressure on this defense that plays a lot of cover 4, a lot of man coverage, to make plays. I was watching some of the Zach Crothers that they got, who came from Shamadabadada High School, same as C.J. Bailey and Jeremiah Smith. Apparently this kid is just an absolute nightmare of a pass rusher at 6'4", 270 as a sophomore. Chris Peak from Panther Valera says this dude just looks like an NFL player. Offensively, they returned Ja'Kurian Turner at running back. They're going to have guys that I think are going to step up at the receiver position just based on the scheme. And from all accounts, and these are from people that are not, sunshine, everything's great for Pitt, Mason Heinchel is looking absolutely lights out in camp. And he is taking control of this team. He looks like an elite ACC quarterback. And if they get that, they averaged 34 points a game last year. If they can push that up and just be this elite offense, they're going to be dangerous for a lot of teams. The offensive line, I think, will be solid. Starter-wise, concerned a little bit about the depth. So at 7, I've got Cal. Honestly, I think Tosh Lupoi was an absolute home run of a hire, grand slam of a hire. Former Cal defensive lineman, has led one of the nation's elite defenses in Oregon for the last X number of years. Was able to keep Jaron Kiave Sangapuateli, who former 5-star USC quarterback Max Brown, Pitt transfer quarterback, who's now an analyst for the ACC Network, said on his YouTube channel during breakdown, JKS is the best quarterback in the country. Not the ACC, the country. Said if he was at Georgia, Texas, Alabama, he would be widely regarded as the best quarterback in the country. And his rationale is that JKS has the ability to throw his guys open. He makes throws other guys can't. He can fit balls into coverage that other players can't. So the biggest thing that I had with Cal was dreadful defensively last year, which I think Lupoi will improve. They had a really good portal class from what I've heard. They gave up almost 28 points a game last year. They ranked 11th in points allowed in the ACC. And they were soft as baby poop on both sides of the line. They have really good skill position players, good quarterback play. Their offensive line was soft. Defense was a little bit softer. So if they can rectify that, they're going to be a nightmare for a lot of teams. At 8, I've got the NC State Wolfpack. And stop me if you've heard this. They're a dark horse this year. They have the ability to win 10 games basically because of the schedule. They have Virginia to open, and then after that they have Cal and Louisville, and they miss a lot of the other contenders in the ACC. I really like C.J. Bailey. I always have. I think the kid's a good young quarterback. My concerns with NC State is the defense last year was bad. They were tied for 11th with Cal. They gave up 27.2 points a game. Hasn't been the same since Peyton Wilson left. They lost their best offensive lineman in the portal. They lost Hollywood Smothers, who again is down the street wearing an upside-down uterus on his helmet and that burnt orange color. And they were lights out when he rushed for 150 yards more. And that production's gone. So, stop me if you heard this, Wolfpack fans. You may think I'm hating on you until I say, look, they're going to win 7 or 8 games until they prove me otherwise. They're going to win 7 games. They're going to beat UNC. They're going to win a bowl game. They're going to be 8-5. And Dave Doran keeps his job for another year. And now every NC State fan is going like, he's out of line. But he's right. At 9, I've got Georgia Tech, and this may be a little bit controversial because I know Georgia Tech people are high on. There may not be a player that meant more to a team in the country than Haynes King. Reminds me so much of Max Duggan when he was at TCU in 2022, where it was just that, we ain't losing today, boys. I'm putting you on my back, and I'm willing to need a victory. And they were a completely different team when Haynes King was not in the lineup. The defense was not good last year. Our dear friend, Rec Talk, watching Rec in his truck after games, and that defense, thought he was going to have an aneurysm or a stroke or both. They lose both coordinators. They bring in a new defensive coordinator, but they lose Buster Faulkner to Florida. They're bringing George Godsey in. It's going to be a completely different scheme. And I think a lot of people are thinking that Alberto Mendoza is going to come in and be Fernando Mendoza when the kid has thrown 19 passes. So I just think Georgia Tech's going to slide back. Even Rex says he thinks they're going to be 6-6. I look at 6-6, 7-5. They could surprise if things break right, but right now I have them at 9. At 10, I've got Duke, and this might rub a lot of Duke fans wrong. I am a big fan of Manny Diaz, I really am. But you lose Darian Mensah, you lose Cooper Barkate. You have an outstanding running back in Nate Shepard, who I like a lot. To me, Jeremiah Hazley is the best tight end in the country. But defensively, you were absolutely putrid last year. You were basically 13th in defense. You gave up 29.2 a game. You were in shootouts every week because you couldn't stop anybody, and it was up to the offense to bail you out in shootouts, and Mensah did that. People also forget you were 5-5 before winning your last 2 to clinch a shot in the ACC title game. So I think that there's going to be a downgrade on the offensive side of the ball, and unless that defense is drastically improved, Duke's going to backslide. At 11, I've got Florida State, and kind of lost in last year. Florida State was a pretty respectable defensive team. They were 6th in the ACC, only 22 points a game. They're a mess. I think there's enough residual talent that they could be competitive. I don't think Ashton Daniels is at all the answer at quarterback any more than I thought Castellanos or Uyogale or any of the other guys they brought in was the answer. Mike Norvell is pretty much a dead coach walking, likely the first to be fired this year. They wanted him gone after last year. They just can't afford the buyout. So, until Florida State proves that they could be anything more than the mess that they've been, I think 11 might be a little too high. I'm just kind of basing it on they do still have, some talent on that defense that can keep them competitive. At 12, I've got Wake Forest. I think Jake Dickert has picked up the torch from Jim Grobe and Dave Clawson in keeping the smallest Power 4 football playing team in the country competitive. And that's a tough task. I don't think people realize how tough a task that is to do. One of the best young coaches in the country, in my opinion, did an outstanding job last year. That defense is fundamentally sound. They're gap sound. They tackle well. They don't beat themselves. Offensively, they bring in Gio Lopez, and it may, I know North Carolina fans are going, good luck with that. But he's reunited with Robbie Zell, who was his offensive coordinator at South Alabama. So if Robbie Zell can tailor game plans for his strengths, let him do what he does best, just get them to be competent offensively, then, Wake could be a 6-7 win team and be back in a bowl game. I think Damon Claiborne, their outstanding running back, losing him is a big loss because he was a home run threat every time he touched the football. At 13, I've got Virginia Tech. I know that I've seen so many things on social media that there are people that have Virginia Tech at like 7 or 6, and I'm like, James Franklin did not bring a national title team. He didn't take half of a national title team from Penn State. He got about 10 guys. Yes, he's been killing it on the recruiting trail, but this is still a team that went 3-9 last year and was just woeful defensively. They were 15th in the ACC in defense. Do I think they're going to be better in time? Yes. Do I think he's going to be the guy that kind of gets them back to where they were during the Beamer days? In time, yeah. Guy's a great coach, great recruiter. But you got a schedule that includes, you've got Pitt, Cal, Clemson, SMU, Miami, and Virginia from a team that won 3 games last year, and that's still kind of a lot of your roster. Where are you getting wins? So at 14, I've got UNC. I think North Carolina is much better than they were last year, and sadly, with the schedule that they have, it might not matter. They may be a better team and win fewer games, just based on schedule and who you're playing. If this year's team had last year's schedule, I'd say you were a 7-win team going to a bowl game. But with this schedule, it's just going to be tough, man. I think the defense is going to be – they were a good defense last year. They weren't terrible. especially when they were getting hung out to dry, is that UNC on defense was 24.5 points a game, not terrible, especially when you take into account how bad their offense was. The offense is going to be better. Bobby Petrino is an offensive whiz. Arkansas averaged, I want to say, 35 points a game last year. They were top 10 in yards per game. Guy knows how to run a college offense. The thing that where are your dudes? Like, where are they? I just look at it and I'm like, Jordan Shipp's a nice receiver. He doesn't scare me. Like, he's not a guy I look at and go, oh, they got Sam Howell in their quarterback. There's Drake May. They got Omarion Hampton in the backfield, and I need to know where that dude is, like, every time. It's who are your difference makers? As a defensive coordinator or any guys on that offense where I look at and go, like, these guys scare me. These are difference makers. I just don't see it. Now, I think the scheme is going to enable them to put up points just based on him, drawing up, out-scheming people. It's not going to be this archaic garbage that you saw from Freddie Kitchens last year. The defense, I think, is going to have to step up, and that's a tall task facing the offenses that you're going to face. You're going to face a Pitt that averages 34 points a game. You're facing Miami and Notre Dame that are just going to put up probably 40 points a game. So it's a big ask for them to step up and, shave that down to 22, 21 points a game and give yourself a puncher's chance. I just don't know. You have a great pass rusher in Abujade. I think they're going to be sound. I think Steve Belichick is going to have them fundamentally sound, good tacklers. I just think this schedule is so brutal that it's going to be such an uphill climb to get to 6 wins. And, if Pitt does what we call pitting it up and loses at home and you steal one, if you go up to Virginia, maybe in a rivalry and get one, or if you're in the drought against State and you beat Syracuse, you beat UConn, and then you beat ETSU, that may be where you get your 6 wins, but it's still a tall task. So at 15, I've got Syracuse. Again, I think Fran Brown is a heck of a coach. They get Steve Angeli back, but that defense was absolutely putrid last year. Yes, the offense contributed to a lot of that. Just offensive ineptitude really contributed to how poor they were on defense. But there's just not a lot of talent, and they've lost so much skill talent to graduation in the portal for the last 2 years. I don't know whether they have any difference makers at the skill positions for Syracuse. And then the last two, it's just Stanford. They bring in Tavita Pritchard. I just think that's a roster that is just, bereft of talent at this point. They're going to struggle to win 2 games. And then BC. BC in 2024 seemed to be kind of on an ascending plane, really. They won 6 games, got to a bowl game. Bill O'Brien seemed to be doing a good job. And then last year, they were just absolutely dreadful. I mean, just dreadful and uncompetitive. So I think they're dead last. I think Bill O'Brien might be fired after this year, whether or not he's the first that gets fired or whether, it's Florida State finally pulls the trigger and gets rid of Norvell based on what happens in that situation. Those are your top 2. So, your boy last year did hit on both of my dark horses. Both of my dark horses last year were Duke and Virginia, and they met in Charlotte for the ACC title game. My 2 dark horses this year, it's Pitt because I think people have kind of just forgotten about them. They lost too much to the portal. And then Cal, and if Cal, like I said, if Cal can play some defense, they've got talent offensively. They can compete with people, and if they get tougher on the offensive line, like I said, allegedly they had a really good portal class. I think Tosh Ploy is going to be a really good head coach for that team, and they might surprise some people this year. And I think you have teams with just kind of favorable schedules. NC State and Virginia really kind of have some more of the mild schedules this year where, if everything breaks right, it could give you the opportunity to win 9-10 games. So, those are my opinions. I'm basically just trying to give you my perspective and give you a little bit of what each team is bringing back, where I see things. So, sound off in the comments, man. Tell your boy, hey, you're a dumbass. Tell me what I got right. Tell me what I got wrong. Tell me whether, you're just Timu Russ needs to take a hike. We want real Russ back because at least real Russ knows what he's talking about. I want to thank Russ for, trusting me to do this. I want to thank all of you in Tar Heels, especially all the Tar Heel Huddle, all these guys, and especially the Huddle Hooligans for welcoming me in and really, putting up with me and treating me like family. I love all you guys, man. Love all you guys, the college football family, and all the guys that tune in and like and comment and just, it's a big family, man. And I mean that where it's nothing better than sitting and talking some football with you boys, man. And boys and girls, it's August 19th. Actually, it's August 20th. We almost did football, man. We're a week away from football, and it's the greatest time of the year, baby. It's Christmas morning, getting close. It's like you got the Advent calendar, counting down the days of college football. So, sound off in the comments, man. Give me your power rankings. Who do you think is going to surprise this year? Who do you think is going to disappoint this year? Who's going to be an impact player? What are some of the games you're looking forward to this season that you think are going to impact the ACC football season? Sound off in the comments, man. Like, share, subscribe to the Daggum channel, Tar Heel Huddle. Again, thanks to all you out there. Thanks to Russ for letting me do this. And as always, it's a great day to be a Tar Heel, and it's a great day to be a Panther. Go Tar Heels. Go Panthers. I'm out.